How's it going, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna have a look at the brand new 2021 Mercedes S-Class, and what I want to do here is to take this beautiful S-Class and turn it into a mid-engine hypercar. So I'm thinking, imagine having the big V12 from the Maybach 680 and have that, instead of pulling you from the front, you having it pushing you from the rear right behind you when you're sitting down and driving this thing. And that's kind of what I want to go with here, some sort of elegant design to this car and turn it into a mid-engine hyper luxury car. And that means that the whole greenhouse here is going to have to be remolded, redesigned, and pushed forward. I think that the new Mercedes S-Class is a clean, classy looking design. I've made a redesign of it though, and that was talking about the rear right here, which I think doesn't have the same kind of bossiness and substance as the previous models. And if you want to go and check that video out and the result of that redesign, I'm gonna link that down in the description. But the key lines here that we need to keep when we go into the redesign that we're gonna make here to turn it into a mid-engine car is I want to keep this beautiful line right here, as you can see, and then we do have a very subtle shoulder line going right here that you can barely see, but it is a crease going from the tail light stretching to the top part of the headlight right there. And on top of that, we have this traditional Mercedes looking greenhouse going right here, and this is obviously going to change a lot as we turn this into a mid-engine car. That means that basically what we're going to do here is we're going to take this whole greenhouse here, let's copy this and then move it forward, and you can see that we have a lot of problems coming from just doing this. So it's going to be a heck of a project to turn this into something that looks decent, at least. I just quickly want to show you one technique you can do when you're sketching mid-engine cars, and what actually is the easiest way to sketch a mid-engine car. So let's say that we want to have a this kind of a wheelbase. Say that we do want to have a mid-engine car. What we need to think about here, and to sketch a mid-engine car, all you gotta really keep in mind is, where do things go in the car? Where does the engine go, and where does the transmission and the seating and the greenhouse and all of that? So what I like to do, and if you look at cars that are mid-engine, you want to have the A-pillar, the start of the greenhouse, which is this pillar right here. You want to have that almost be exactly over the front axle right there. So you want this to meet the hood somewhere around that point right there, and then you can stretch this down, and boom, we have ourselves a mid-engine car. It's really not more complicated than that. And for the rear, you can design the rear as you wish, however you want. But now you can see that we're going to have space in the rear for a mid-engine that we don't have if we start the A-pillar at a later point. If we move the A-pillar back this way, then we have a front engine car by just moving the greenhouse. So you can see that I'm sketching both here now. This second high point of the greenhouse, this would be a front engine car, and this would be a mid-engine car. Mercedes actually has some history with mid-engine V12, at least as concept. For example, the Mercedes-Benz C112, that was an experimental vehicle from Mercedes and a concept car that was built in 1991, and it was the continuation of the experimental vehicle called the C111. Now the C112 was intended to be the road legal counterpart of the Sauber-built C11 race car developed for the 1990 World Sport Prototype Championships. The C112 was equipped with a new 6-liter V12 engine that was set in the middle of the car with a peak power of 402 horsepower and 428 pound-feet of torque. Technically, in theory, the C112 could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in about 4.9 seconds and reach a top speed of 192 miles per hour. At the top speed, the C12 was claimed to generate a downforce of 2,200 pounds. However, none of these numbers were actually validated because the car was never driven, and that's kind of sad. Even though Mercedes received 700 orders for the car, it never went into production, as it was determined by Mercedes executive that the flagship car wasn't needed to increase the attention drawn to Mercedes, as it was already being done by their success in motorsport. And this is kind of an interesting argument for why not to build this car. So they went through all the experiment car of the C111 and then the C112, but in the end they had no intentions of actually building the car for their customers. And I think that's a shame, because it looks very cool. If you look at it from the rear, you can definitely tell the Mercedes 190 style graphics in the taillight. It's just been molded in a different way to fit a supercar, a detail that I think is really cool to look at, because you can see what era this car comes from just by looking at the taillights of the car. And it's a shame they never built it. I mean, it looks like they had everything going for them, and they even had the orders on paper, and they just decided to not go with it. It feels like they just said no to a very good marketing opportunity for the brand here. So let's talk about the redesign here and what's going on. So when you do a mid-engine transformation like this, there are a lot of things that needs to happen. First of all, you need to, of course, move the greenhouse forward. I'm going to turn this into a 2-door instead of a 4-door Mercedes S-Class. I don't want a 4-door mid-engine S-Class. That just doesn't make sense. So I want to have a 2-door with the V12 in the back. That means that the A-pillar, as I showed you, is going to stretch a little further forward, closer to the front axle. And on top of that, we need to stretch out the front end and make the front end more chiseled, more like a spear front end. So we have almost a hood. If you look at it from side view, you're gonna have the hood going in, and then kind of almost goes into the A-pillar in the same angle. So we don't have a massive hood anymore, because of course we don't have an engine to fit under there. But the wheelbase, I want to keep the wheelbase the same and make this look like a very elegant looking V12 mid-engine car. It could possibly even be electric with these proportions right here. I usually like to de-chrome cars when they have chrome on them, but in this case, the chrome around the windows, the chrome trim, I think I'm gonna keep that. I'm just going to change out some front details. I like the different AMG grills that they have recently, more than this more elegant version of the front grille. I want to have the more sporty AMG version of the front end grille, and that's what I'm going to apply at the very end of this redesign. Also, of course, fill out the wheelhouses a lot more better. I love these wheels because what they remind me of is the wheels from the CLK GTR, which is one of my favorite wheels in the history of Mercedes, because they look very simple and they also look very elegant at the same time. And these are like a continuation or a redesign, modernization of the CLK GTR wheels, and these are definitely the wheels I would go for if I was getting the new Mercedes S-Class. I absolutely love the way these looks. Same kind of style as the CLK GTR, with the elegance and simplicity which suits the overall feeling of this car. And the CLK GTR is just one of these cool concepts. They decided to not build the C112, but instead they decided to go ahead and build the CLK GTR, which is pretty interesting because that looks like a Photoshop rendering of a CLK of the time turned into a supercar, and that they actually decided to go ahead and build, because you have a lot of parts from the CLK, the regular CLK. You have the taillights, you have the front end, of course, and a bunch of different things that is pretty interesting to see when you look at the CLK GTR. It just looks like a CLK that's been stretched, widened, and just flattened. And you can see the angle of the front end, the grille in the front end, just how big of an angle it has right there. But it still looks like a traditional luxury Mercedes, which is so interesting. I think that's the only car I can think of that has the same kind of luxury Mercedes feeling to it, but it looks, the proportions is that of a extreme hypercar. I think that's what makes the CLK GTR so unique. So we're coming to an end here of this redesign. I really think it turned out cool. It looks like a cool design, very chiseled, very simplistic, because it's a Mercedes. They don't overstyle things. They don't do that, specifically not if you talk about an S-Class. If we were to make, for example, let's say a C-Class mid-engine car, then we might want to add some more styling into this car. But I don't want to have any air intakes in the side, even though it's probably would be necessary to have some air intakes in the side to cool this massive, what is it, 6.8 liter V12 that you have for the Maybach engine. But if I could decide exactly how I want this to look, I would have a clean surface on the side, even behind the rear, even behind the doors, and not add any more air intakes. If the engineers could work with that and find a way to cool the engine without any air intakes on the side, that would be perfect. But my guess is if Mercedes were to actually build something like this, which is obviously never going to happen, but if they were to build something like this, I'm pretty sure we would need to add some sort of air intake or vent right behind the rear doors. But to me, it's hard to do that in a very elegant Mercedes S-Classy way, so I'm just gonna leave it like this. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.